Welcome in, everyone. We'll give it just a quick minute before we launch things. We're excited to have you here today. My name is Muhi. I am a trainer with Fundraising Academy, and we're looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you, everyone, for joining our monthly webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about maximizing fundraising impact through community building. My name is Muhi. I am a trainer with Fundraising Academy, and it is a pleasure to be here with all of you. We have a special guest with us today, Lisa Baxter, and I'll do a more formal introduction of her after we talk through some housekeeping items. We are going to be utilizing the Q&A feature in the Zoom app, so please point all questions that way. When you have them, we'll come back to it all the way at the end of the session. So we will be, again, talking about maximizing fundraising impact through community building. Before we get to the topic at hand, a little bit of background about myself. I've been a one-person development team. I've been a frontline fundraiser. I've been a chief development officer at national organizations. So hopefully similar to some of you with a variety of background. If this is your first Fundraising Academy webinar, thank you for being here. If you are a seasoned veteran of our webinars, welcome back. And we like to have our content be applicable for somebody who has 15, 20 years of experience or is brand new in the field. So hopefully you will walk away with a few insights. Fundraising Academy is available to everybody free of cost. These webinars, along with our online learning portal. We have a professional development conference called Cultivate that happens once a year. We're looking at bringing in some quarterly webinars and workshops in person as well in the San Diego region. So definitely do find out more about our work and how you can benefit from it. Before we pass things over to Lisa, we want to give a quick refresher on our cause selling cycle. There are 3 phases. Many of you may be familiar with this or compared to the traditional fundraising model, but we understand that fundraising is relationship driven. It's more than just cultivation and making the ask and stewardship. There are multiple phases and they each take importance. And when done right, and we believe in the right order, you will set yourself up for success. So in phase 1, you have prospecting. In phase 2, in phase 1, you have prospecting and the pre-approach. In phase 2, you have the approach, need discovery, presentation, and handling objections. And in phase 3, you have the ask and stewardship. Each of these can be their own webinar, so we're not going to dive deep into these topics, but in our online learning portal, you can find a whole host of content and other webinars free of charge where we dive into these topics and more. For today's presentation, we are going to be talking about the approach, which is speaking to and sounding out your prospect for the first time. So it's how you are going to be engaging with different communities, what questions you would want to ask them, what do you know about them, and how you can use that information to deepen the relationship. Additionally, as part of this conversation today, we are going to be looking into stewardship. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with stewardship, and that is follow-up that fosters long-term donor loyalty. So what are we doing each and every day to deepen that relationship with our donors and getting them closer to the mission? And more importantly, how their gift makes an impact. In the chat, I'd love to hear from each and every one of you, where you're located, where you're based, what organizations you're part of, to give Lisa some context as she gets into the discussion as well. And it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce Lisa Baxter, who is a chief community builder and is at the Coleman Baxter Agency. For those of you who've joined us, Lisa is a fundraising practitioner with over 17 years of experience. She has successfully raised millions of dollars for local, regional, national nonprofit organizations and has led and mentored high-performing teams. She is the chief community builder of the Coleman Baxter Agency, immediate past president of the Association of Fundraising Professionals of Greater Los Angeles, and she has served on the board of directors for 6 years. Thank you so much for your community commitment, Lisa. Lisa has held prior roles at MLK Community Health Foundation, After School All Stars Los Angeles, Starlight Children's Foundation, Make-A-Wish Greater Los Angeles, Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and she is a proud Afro-Latina, bibliophile, marathon dancer, and bishop mama. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Muhi. I am thrilled to, be here to share my lived experience through community building. I want to thank the Fundraising Academy and National University for the opportunity and the platform to share this work, and all of our participants for showing up today, because I know as frontliners and folks working in nonprofit, that can be very hard. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So today, I know that we only have an hour, so please know that I'm really serving you with some foundational blocks that you'll be able to build upon in the new fiscal year. So what is community building? Community building is, at its core, it's bringing people together and creating a sense of belonging. But community building is also heart-centered and heart-driven. It's also community-centric, which means it is centering the communities based on trust, partnership, psychological safety, authenticity, intention, right language, inclusivity, just to name a few of the principles. It's also decolonized. There are a lot of negative narratives about how we should show up and think that was never created by us. And so we have to learn how to think for ourselves and seek the truth, and not lean on something that was decreed like 300 years ago that no longer serves us. Community building at its core is also dismantling systems that were not made to include everyone. It is an act of resistance that, if done right, it will create deep belonging, not just a sense of belonging, but belonging. And I think that Audre Lorde said it best: for the master's tools will never dismantle master's house. And that's something that she said back in 1979 that I think is still true today. It's like, we can't keep using the same things for things that no longer serve us. This is a new era of fundraising, a new era of philanthropy, and we must act accordingly. So before we dive a little bit deeper, I just like to share my origin story so you understand why my heart is in this work. There are 3 communities that I constantly build and exist in. So my lived community of South Central, my community of family and friends, and my professional community, which includes the Association of Fundraising Professionals and being in the sector for 17 years. But my story really begins with my parents, John and Ida Coleman. They were immigrants from Central America. They came from La Ceiba, Honduras, and San Ignacio, Belize, respectively. My parents were the first activists, philanthropists, and community builders I ever knew. They taught my 2 brothers and I the importance of God, faith, love, music, family, and giving back. And they instilled a very deep, deep, deep love for our community, South Central, which is home of the Tongva tribe. They were founding members of the African American Catholic Center for Evangelization, and that is very closely related to the cathedral, which is in downtown Los Angeles. They received awards from Pope John Paul and Pope Benedict for their community activism work at Nativity Catholic Church on 57th and Vermont. Their story has never been about awards, though. It's been about a deep love of building and cultivating community through philanthropy, which by definition is mutual caring and generosity. So what did that look like? That looked like volunteering their time, donating money to a plethora of nonprofits, identifying resources, visiting the sick and shut in, feeding unhoused, visiting and cleaning the graves of loved ones, raising awareness through speaking and committee work, and providing shelter for a lot of people. A lot of people lived with us. So all of that is like the extra stuff, the stuff that folks don't want to do, the stuff that takes time and a whole lot of grace. They live their lives for we, not me. And the values that they instilled in my brothers and I have always pushed me forward and essentially shaped the leader, the community builder that I am today. So I build community wherever I am because of how I was raised and because the majority of the nonprofits that I've worked at rarely had warm portfolios. So I had to do it also out of necessity. I love this quote because it really focuses on the central theme of community building. And it has been defined as obliterating feelings of dependency and replacing it with attitudes of self-reliance, self-confidence, and responsibility. Now, I don't know if you all remember the 2010 documentary Waiting for Superman. It was a critique on the American public education system, and it chronicled the journey of students trying to get into competitive charter schools. And Jeffrey Canada, he was an educator that was highlighted in the documentary, and he shared his devastation in the documentary when he finally realized that Superman was a fictional character and that there was, I quote, there was no one with enough power coming to save us. So this is what that quote reminds me of, that when you are building community, you can't wait for the powers that be or even for permission. You are who everyone is waiting for, and you must build over time based on owning your power, confidence, and commitment. You know, the nonprofit sector is very slowly evolving from the transactional to the transformational. Donors are calling for more authenticity and collaboration. Employees are not being quiet about the mistreatment and injustices in the sector towards themselves and the beneficiaries of the missions they serve. And the partnership economy is gaining momentum. The landscape is changing, and we need to shift with it. So this shift is also a reminder that everything in fundraising in life is not always about tactics, but whether your heart is in the right place as you do this work. It's also a reminder to stop playing small and safe, take scaled risk, and dare to look and approach our work differently. And this is what I like to call strategic disruption. So if we are decolonizing our minds from old thinking, if we're dismantling systems that do not serve us and leaning on the true meaning of philanthropy, that so that we can ultimately raise what Jim Langley talks about in his most recent LinkedIn post, we can raise donor trust, raise retention, raise credibility, raise communities with greater shared purpose, and raise legitimate philanthropic hope, then we can start seeing these wins more consistently. So this 5-point framework will help put some of these things into perspective. And that is the acronym BUILD, which is build trust and visibility, unify your heart with your values, invest in your relationships, lead yourself and engage others, and determine your goals and take action. So let's start with the first one. Build trust and visibility. So I want you all to consider the trust triangle. And this is something, well, I'll share a link a little bit later. The trust triangle, it focuses on 3 areas: authenticity. That's where people will tend to trust you when they are dealing with the real you. Empathy, they believe that you care. And logic, they have faith in your judgment and competence. So I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. Do you trust yourself? Do they, meaning your donors, your volunteers, the people that you work with, sponsors, and supporters, do they trust you? And do they trust themselves through you? You must build trust before any real change can start. And that is, I think, really at the heart of the first foundational block of community building, is building that trust. The second is visibility. Are you visible in the community you serve, whether it's online, in person? Do people know who you are at every level in your organization and in the community that your organization is in? Do you have relationships with the decision makers and policy makers in the communities you serve? And are you attending community events and have built a rapport within those circles of influence? Those are very important things that you really need to think about as you're building community. Also, do you really know and understand the community that you serve and their needs? There's a quote by one of my favorite poets, Rumi, that says, "Wherever you are, be the soul of that place." And that means whatever you do, you're all in. You learn the landscape, the people, the goals, the language, the ecosystem of it all, and you get to the heart of the things. You have to be curious, you have to listen and learn. So, think about this. If you're only showing up when you need to, then you're not focused on building community or a culture philanthropy. You're just showing up just because you feel that that's what you need to do to fill your quota for the day. So you really need to show up. And do you have a presence on LinkedIn? And I say LinkedIn because I think it's such a valuable tool. And I actually think it's so much better than Instagram. That is just my preference. But can people easily look you up and connect with you? Are you active on there? Do you have followers? Do you have organic content that builds awareness of your organization or just helps you to build your brand? Because we all have to remember that we are our personal brands. So are you accessible within reason? And I say within reason because obviously you have a life outside of fundraising, but are you accessible? Do people feel that they can approach you and talk to you and partner with you? So in this current climate where we're always talking about, vibes and, what we're giving, really know that your vibe should be giving, that whenever you meet somebody, that they should feel that you see them, you hear them, you value them, and that the work that you're doing, that you're in it together. The next one, unifying your heart and values. So for my Lauryn Hill fans out there, remember that line from Doo-Wop that says, "How you gonna win if you ain't right within?" So in order for us to create community with shared purposes and belonging, we first must work on ourselves individually. And I cannot emphasize that more. Your heart needs to be in the right place. Your intentions need to be pure, and you need to keep the we before me. When your heart is in the right place, when your values have stronger meaning and impact on your values will have a stronger meaning and impact on those around you. So people won't just see you, they will feel you. I'm going to say that again. People won't just see you, they will feel you. And that's the difference. So really take some time to re-examine yourself, your values, how you're showing up in the work, and get in touch or back in touch with your why. Because when you have a positive attitude, when you have inner peace and a healthy relationship with yourself, your creativity and productivity will soar, and so will your network and all of those things that you focus on as you're moving and advancing your mission forward. The next one is invest in your relationships. I know that we talk about this a lot in fundraising, and this is the part that I like to call meeting the people, getting to know everyone and their mama, really, internally and externally, really knowing who the folks are in your organization and the community. My dad would always say, have friends in all places. So I don't care if you're the janitor or the CEO, I will treat you the same, and I will do my best to make it a reciprocal relationship. And I think that's the part that we forget, that these relationships are reciprocal. It's not just always about us going and asking and not giving. It's a reciprocal, beneficial relationship. And in this instance, time is your greatest currency here. It takes time to develop and cultivate true, genuine relationships. And we all know the donor cycle, but what I'm talking about is being authentic and intentional in how you interact with people. So you have to invest in lived experience. those that are close to the problem you're working to solve. I just think back to when I first started in fundraising at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and obviously we're taking care of kids that were very sick, and the care that was put into ensuring that their stories were told correctly, they were told with care and consideration, and that we actually had relationships with them. I actually, during my when I got married, two of those um, folks that we would that two of the patients that were at Children's Hospital that I became very close to became like family, and they even came to my wedding. And so, it's really getting to know who you're supporting and how you can support them best, not deciding for them what their needs are. And that means supporting your constituents, your donors, colleagues, vendors, partners, and the like. And that could be simple things like, going to their event, making a donation to, I don't know, a nonprofit, or whatever fundraising event that they have, reposting their posts, doing things that show that you care. And this is all intrinsically connected to building community. The next one, lead yourself and engage others. So I am from the school of John C. Maxwell. And I have always lived by the 5 things to lift your leadership lid. And that is lead yourself, add value to people every day, read leadership, practice leadership, and grow intentionally. So when we're talking about leading yourself, we're talking about taking control of your narrative, your brand, your education and career development as a nonprofit leader. We're also asking you to take a look at your portfolios and ask yourself, is it a good representation of the communities you serve? Are people of the global majority represented there? Are there donors that may seem unlikely, but, or maybe considered, donors that like to take risks, but do they really align with with your mission and all of the things that you're trying to accomplish? Looking at your liberation partners, and these are people that are really invested in your organization and ensuring that those constituents get everything that they need, whether it's in-kind resources or outside community groups, fraternities and sororities, church groups, Rotary clubs, investment clubs, employee affinity groups. Really think deeply about all the groups and people that you can engage in your mission that align with all of your goals and what you're trying to accomplish. I remember back in the day, I don't know if you guys remember Donnie and Marie Osmond. I know I'm definitely aging myself, and that's fine. I'm Generation X, but I remember that Marie Osmond, she loved dolls, and she auctioned off this Christmas tree that, had these kind of old-fashioned, kind of scary looking dolls on them. But it was a very kind of off the beaten path fundraiser, but that fundraiser raised a lot of money. So it was, at the time, the organization I was with, it was the organization taking the risk to say, you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to see this through. And they raised quite a bit of money. So, really looking at things and being more open, when you are thinking about what type of um, of donors that you want to connect with, and include them in your strategy. Seek them out, get to know them, and organically, invite them to learn about more about you and your organization. Customize their experience to what they are interested in and passionate about. Update them consistently. Introduce them to other people that could be beneficial to them. Send them articles on topics that they care about. Invite them to serve on your board or committee if that makes sense. But really think about, how do you also build relationships with, the people in your own life? I mean, I think that's the part that kind of like got away from us, is that we were focusing on being so donor centric that we were holding the donor on in such a high regard that we weren't treating them as people. They just want to be treated as people. And so really think about how, do you grow and cultivate and steward the relationships that you're currently in? It's the same approach, right? Add value to people every day. So you add value to your teams, your partners, your donors, your constituents. You be a resource. I always say, how can I be a resource? And people have also said it to me, and that makes me so excited. Like, how can I support you when your donors hear that, your partners hear that, your colleagues hear that? It again, it becomes a reciprocal relationship. So be a resource, be an advocate, be an accomplice. I like the word accomplice better than ally. And the reason why is because I feel like an ally is obviously there to support, but accomplice will be the one that said, well, let's ride at dawn. Let's go and let's do this together. Let me say your name in rooms that you may not be in. And also be accountable. I think that's another thing that we get away from and fundraising is not being accountable, for whether it's the mistakes that we make or our behaviors or just, not taking accountability for, how we're trying to get more awareness for the missions that we serve. Read
Yeah.
leadership, you know, staying up
Well,
on current events and everything. And Muhi, you were going to say something.
yeah, I just wanted to jump in a little bit. I think what you're sharing is super critical and helps fundraisers frame context of how they want to engage with their donors.
Yeah.
Something that you said made me think about, you know, are our donors representative of the beneficiaries of our organization? Are we reaching the same social demographics? Are we introducing those beneficiaries to be participants on our board? Do they have a say in how the organization is managed and run? And providing access and opportunity for those communities that we serve as well. Additionally, I think that if we talk to our donors and really ask thought-provoking, open-ended questions about what they want to achieve with their philanthropic engagement and portfolio, and our organization might just be one sliver of that, and they may be passionate about this one sliver, but maybe their philanthropic objectives and goals are much broader in context. And it's helpful to know and align yourself with what their philanthropic priorities are. Because, yes, you may be a touch point for your organization, but you also may know of other organizations that they'd be interested in supporting. And it's not competitive. It's not that it's going to diminish the amount they're going to give to your charity. Think about it from a framework of abundance, of helping this donor achieve their philanthropic goals. And I think as major gift officers, fundraisers, relationship managers, we need to sometimes put the donor's interest at the forefront of the conversation to really see what it is they are trying to achieve so that you can better service them as a fundraiser. So just wanted to throw
Absolutely.
that in there.
Absolutely. No, I love that 1,000%. And, and I love the Virtus Group definition of fundraising. It's like, I tap into people's passions and interests. And as a result, I raise money. So we're not leading with that. We're first leading with getting to know what the donor is thinking, what are their passions and interests? How can we, really make this experience a great one for them? And, right now we're hearing a lot of how, donors, they just want to be treated as collaborators, as partners. They don't want and this does not mean that we're just not still treating them with respect or anything like this. This just means that we're changing our approach. A lot of times, the donor and the fundraisers are scared and intimidated of each other. It's like we were always taught to kind of be like, oh, okay, we're going to meet with this person, let's be on our best behavior and all of that, when all that is needed is just a heart-to-heart talk between two humans that are really trying to make a difference in the world. And when you think about that and the conversations that you're having, and also how you're setting up your portfolio, keeping in mind, like you said, that all and that different groups are represented. And that's why I brought up people of the global majority, because a lot of times they're kept out of the conversations. Almost every organization that I've been at, there has been some kind of hesitancy about, really including and diversifying the donor base in that way. And it's always been crazy to me because newsflash, people of the global majority do have means, okay? They are very philanthropic. It's just that no one has asked them. And so we want to continue to open ourselves up to that and understand that we need to be more inclusive, and we need to include all voices at the table. And so, when you're approaching donors and you feel uncomfortable about it, just approach it from a point of how you would want to be approached. Say hello first, right? I know for the introverts out there, that can be a little bit scary, but say hello and then really get to talk to them, ask them amazing questions and get to know them over time. And again, I keep saying time is a currency because a lot of people don't want to take time. This in this very, social media, I need it now culture, we have to take more time getting to know people instead of just going in for the kill, right? Because I know that there are some fundraisers that they're like, look, I got to close these gifts by the end of third quarter or what have you, but that's not how relationships are built. So when you
And
continue.
what one point to that, Lisa, sorry to jump in.
Uh-huh.
It may not be the fundraiser stating that they have these deadlines. It's their managers, it's the organizations that say these are the metrics you need to hit 100 donor visits this time frame, and you need to do X, Y, and Z. But that's just not how practical it is when you're dealing with donors and their timeline of giving. Sure, you may have more success towards the end of the year because that's when they typically make their gift. But these are things that I see challenging from hierarchy within organizations as well, that
Absolutely.
maybe don't have a traditional fundraising background, and they came in from sales or they came in from programs and other means. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox.
No, but it's the truth. And it puts us at a disadvantage because it's like, okay, you want me to raise, $17 million this year, but we don't, first of all, we don't even have a warm portfolio and you want me to get to know people and all of that. So that's really hard to do. And so that's why I said that we need to decolonize and dismantle these systems, right? Because this is not working for us anymore. And so that's where I talk about leading yourself. Sometimes you can't just go by what, your manager is saying. You have to really, think about what your goals are and how you want to accomplish it and what your approach is going to be. And that's why practicing leadership, putting yourself out there, putting yourself in positions where you can meet people and network and be seen and be visible is going to be so helpful, because the more people that the more friends that you have and the more opportunities that can come your way, and things that you wouldn't even think about. I mean, I even think about myself and the work that I'm doing right now. I haven't been a frontline fundraiser since 2021, but the consulting work and the coaching work that I've done has all come from word of mouth, right? And so that's because, you put yourself out there, and also you're growing intentionally every day. So you have to define what that looks like for you. That means to challenge yourself and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That is the part that a lot of us do not like. That is the part that, whether it's, a CDO or a new fundraiser or a senior fundraiser, we do not like to feel uncomfortable with a lot of the things that are coming up, because right now the political and the personal are all melding together, and we really have to learn how to make those distinctions. And then when I think about how we are engaging people, I feel like we complicate it a lot. I think the best way to engage people is to be passionate. Right? Passion is contagious. It's one of the quickest ways to get people's attention. When you are passionate about your mission, you fire other people up, and that is the way that they get excited about learning more about your organization, about giving to your organization, volunteering for your organization. You are that conduit, you're that vessel. And I think when we understand that from a very heart-centered, heart-driven point of view, then you will see the difference in your fundraising, in the way that people relate to you, and in the way that you relate to them. So all good points, Muhi, because again, I really think that the fundraising sector really needs a whole overhaul. And I do feel like I'm starting to see, those things coming slowly. Um, the next one, determining your goals and taking action. So, all of your goals should be big enough, that it takes more than you. I mean, obviously, if you're raising, your goal, for the year is to raise 2 million, whether it's 2 million, 7 million, or 500,000, it should always be big enough, and take more than you. But we need to also be clear on our governing goals. Like, what do we want to accomplish, as a nonprofit leader? How will these goals align with the impact that we want to have in our organization? So for me personally, I want to see the advancement of equitable and inclusive fundraising practices, and that includes decolonizing and dismantling these systems. I want to see the redistribution of power to shared power through community-centric fundraising, which is definitely it's pretty self-explanatory. You're including the whole community in what you're doing, and everybody has a voice. There is trust built there. There is psychological safety. There's inclusivity. There's all of these very heart-driven, heart-centered principles that you can really build a strong community from. Also, I want to see fundraising to become more joyous and collaborative. I feel like fundraising has, and since I've been in it, it's been rather, I don't want to say the word conservative, but the joy has not quite been in it. And so we are in charge of bringing that joy. We're in charge of, determining how can we make these collaborations, not only fun collaborations, but collaborations that are going to be not just long-term, but also, sustainable, so that we are really setting up, the future for success. And so those are some of the things that I really want you to think about as you're determining your goals and taking action: is how is this all leading to the we, not the me, right? And taking action, that means, again, that all voices are at the table, they are heard, valued, and seen, that there are no more silos, and that you're moving with intention, which is really, really important. So the next part is, how do I build my community building plan? And that's looking at it from 4 aspects, and that's value proposition, prospective funders, prospective champions, and a fundraising blueprint. So when you think about value proposition, and these are all words that we've heard before, but remember, we're not necessarily here to reinvent the entire wheel. We're here to reinvent our approach. So value proposition is the compelling and effective messaging of an organization, of what the organization needs for philanthropic support. And this is where you need to be very intentional and thoughtful with your language and how the messages are being conveyed. You also have to incite urgency and participation. And only you will know how to do that, because you have spoken to the people, you know what the needs are, you are in the communities that you serve, you understand the landscape, you know who the decision makers are, policymakers are, and all of those things. And you're able to really forge a path and set a strategy that is going to, make the most impact. Prospective funders, the identification and prioritization of top prospects through segmentation of passions and interests. Prioritize people, the global majority, if that's something that you haven't done before. Think about unlikely donors, donors that you would never have thought about. Those actually, I have had experience that they've made some of the best donors because nobody has asked them. Think about your liberation partners. Who are those folks that you're going to partner with that are actually helping to liberate those constituents that you serve, the beneficiaries of the funding? Think about even in-kind donors. That's very simple, right? A lot of you, probably have in-kind donors, but have you ever thought about converting them to donors and what that will look like and what that will take? You have to really start with where you are and what you have. And so I actually spoke to someone yesterday, and they did not have most of their funding came from the state and federal, and they don't have donors, individual donors of any kind, but they do have a lot of in-kind donors. So I talked to them about how can you, really convert them and get them to, give in another way. Prospective champions. The organizational structure, design, and makeup of talent across volunteer, staff, board, community, and constituents to guide the strategy and operations of fundraising initiatives. Really think about the champions that you have in your corner right now, or think about those who you want to champion your mission. You have to be really, really thoughtful. I have had the honor of being able to create, whether it's affinity groups or councils at most of the organizations that I've been at. And one of my most proudest was creating the Dream Council, which is still going on at MLK Community Health Foundation. I was able to select each person from various backgrounds and ethnicities to be on this amazing group that is continuing to help advance fundraising and other initiatives, at the hospital. And that has been the greatest joy, to leave a legacy there that, this will continue even if I am not, on staff. So really think about who your champions are, who your funders are going to be. Think out the box. I had a conversation with someone last week and we were talking about fundraisers are creatives. I don't think we think about it like that. We are creative. So how can we be creative in our approach when we are identifying funders, when we are identifying champions, and the way that we speak and talk to them? And then you can create your fundraising blueprint, because after you have crafted your messaging, after you have your funders and your champions, you've known them, you're able to think about, what is the strategy? What's my timeline, that is going to be developed for each of the departments, programs, prospect levels that will deliver the right prospect through the right solicitor. I always say it's the 3 M's. It's medium, message, and messenger. Where do you start? What do we have access to now? So really, again, this is not about reinventing the whole wheel, but also steering it in another direction. And that is a direction where we are decolonized, we have dismantled, and we are there serving, through our heart. And community building successes. So these are the 4 organizations that I think have done some amazing work through community building. MLK Community Health Foundation, through the Watts Rising Project, we're able to put together a promotora program for the Watts area. And promotoras are community health workers, mostly Latinas, but it's such an amazing program because it helps to train people from the community to help people in the community for their health and well-being, whether that's community meetings, whether that is health drives or events and the like, and really getting people mobilized through health, which if you don't know, in under-resourced areas, that is definitely a disparity and something that needs to be highlighted more. Cedars-Sinai, I think, has done a really great job with their community programs and services. They have a heavy footprint in LA, and they have created a very strong network of partners and volunteers that was built over time through trust and care. They didn't just jump into these communities. They got to learn the communities, learn who the decision makers and policy makers are, and really, really invest in, what those communities really needed. Community Coalition, I love them so much. I think they are one of the best community organizing NPOs, not just in South Central, but across the country, and they are headquartered in South Central. The way that they mobilize and get things done legislatively, economically, and systemically is just mind-blowing. So please check them out. And KIPP SoCal Public Schools, they have currently what is called the Promise of Tomorrow Initiative, and that is based on the Figueroa Corridor, which is a stretch of which is a street and a stretch of land that has always historically been occupied by human and sex trafficking, gangs, and the like. And this has been one of the most amazing community building centric models that I've seen in a long time, that involves both school system and the community of South Central. So at this time, I would like to invite my very special guest, Kenzie Durham. She is the Major Gift Advisor from KIPP SoCal development team in LA to share their success and where they're at currently. Kenzie?
Thank you so much, Lisa. Like Lisa mentioned, my name is Kinsey Durham, and I currently work for KIPP SoCal. We are a public charter school that's nationwide, but SoCal is the regional component of that. And we're based in South Los Angeles, East LA, one school in San Diego, and Compton, Watts, Boyle Heights area. So one of the interesting and I think factors that sets KIPP SoCal aside from other schools, public and nonprofit, is we really focus on the community and the child holistically. So aside of just ensuring our kids are prepared and for academic rigor, we also look at what they're doing at home, what their home life looks like, what their mental health looks like, and how we can ensure that they are successful in all components of life. One way we do this is by really entrenching ourselves in the community. So we not only put our schools in communities, in marginalized communities, but we really take this opportunity to get to know the community, the parents, the students, and meet the children where they're at. And that is what we have seen is the best model of success for our kids. So like Lisa mentioned, one of the initiatives that we're working on right now that I'm managing specifically is called our Promise of Tomorrow initiative, or as we call it internally, the Motel Project. So we have two schools that are on Figueroa between 84th and 87th. And if anyone is familiar with Southern California and South LA specifically, you will know that that corridor is one of the busiest, highest sex trafficking rate corridors in the US. Unfortunately, Catty Corner from one of our schools is called Kitty Corner because the average child or woman who has been sex trafficked there is between 12 and 13 years old. This is not only a problem for our students, for the girls who are sex trafficked, but for the community at whole. So we had our two schools on Figueroa, and right in between both of those schools was a motel where it was high sex trafficking, and our children were experiencing sex paraphernalia being thrown into their schoolyard. They were seeing prostitutes, johns, high police activity. And we were really, really lobbying to shut the motel down, but it was kind of seemed like an impossible task until we band together and joined with the community. So in 2015 is when our schools were there. We had been lobbying and lobbying to city council to like, let's get this motel cleaned up. Let's get this motel closed down. And in 2021, there was a shooting there and there was a murder and our kids were unable to go to school that day. And everyone was like, enough is enough. So what we did was we banded with and united with the community, with parents, with staff, with our school leaders, with other organizations who were centralized to that area. And we created what we call, well, the parents created what we called the Keep Our South LA Community Safe Coalition. And with this coalition and with the support of all of our community members, we were able to get that motel shut down. We were able to purchase the property between our schools, and we were also able to bulldoze that and utilize it for our students. Not only were we able to get that motel shut down, but 3 other motels on the Figueroa corridor that are in close proximity to our schools. And it wasn't just about our students and KIPP SoCal students. It was really about what's best for the community. And that extreme hurdle would not have been able to be overcome without the support of community members. So now we have the motel, we purchased the motel, we bulldozed the motel. So what comes next? So what we've done is we've looked at the community, like Lisa mentioned, a lot of people don't look at the global majority, as she loves to call it, for fundraising opportunity. But in South Los Angeles, there's a lot of people there who still live there, who have lived there, who grew up there, who have means, who are small business owners, and who want to come together to support this cause. So it has been a community effort to fundraise. We have a goal of $3.5 million. But what's special is this building will not just be used for KIPP SoCal students, but it will also be used for the community. We'll have workforce development classes. There'll be an auditorium there for the performing arts, not only for our students, but for other kids in the community who, even if they attend other schools, there's not a lot of green space in South LA. So the rooftop of that facility will have a garden, we'll have a playground, we'll have a gymnasium for extracurricular activities, and we'll have a media center. We will be able to offer parents, financial literacy courses because we're partnering with other organizations. We'll be able to offer them, like I mentioned, workforce development. But this is something that would not be capable if we weren't so community-based and community-driven. Three of the words that really stuck out to me during Lisa's presentation were collaboration or being collaborative, passion, and joyful. And I think working for nonprofits and fundraising specifically, if you're passionate about your cause and your mission and you are joyful and happy about it, the collaboration comes easy, right? Because you're able to get out in the community, you're able to talk to your donors, you're able to build these alliances and these bridges with folks, and your passion and love and drive for what you do is easily shown through if you believe in that. So this has been an initiative that we're working on for fundraising through Major Gift, through corporate foundations, family foundations, also doing peer-to-peer fundraising in the school itself, and working with our community partners to ensure that this is something that we can be successful at for everyone in the community.
Thank you so much, Kenzie. KIPP SoCal is doing some great work, so please connect with Kenzie on LinkedIn if you would like to learn more. So ultimately, as the sector evolves, these are some things that we should well, actually, before I get into that, I also wanted to comment that the promise of tomorrow, for me, is very near and dear to my heart. I am a resident of South Central, and it is really important for me to see our community highlighted in a very positive way. And again, this is a part of decolonizing and dismantling systems, because we were always taught as we were growing up from society that where you come from doesn't mean anything. And I've always felt like the hood in me was the good in me. And so this is also about not just raising money, but advancing the quality of life and safety in our communities through community building. And so that is really important, and that's a very different conversation. So I just wanted to point that out. So the sector is evolving, and there's some things that we definitely should expect as we're building our communities and liberation partners and partnerships. Community-centric fundraising is coming in hot, and I'm so thankful for that. Please, please, please this is, we call these trends. I don't really like that word, but community-centric fundraising should have always been. And I think we have had that. I just think about back in the day, when there were, like things like the Black Panther Party and, the civil rights movement. There was a lot of organizing and all of that. So we need to get back to those fundamentals. Also, strategic collaborations and partnerships. Again, that's why I said about fundraisers being creatives. We need to think about creative collaborations and partnerships that are really going to take your organization to the next level and also help the community as well. Grassroots fundraising and advocacy-based work is definitely on the rise. I think sometimes there is a misconception about grassroots. It means that you don't have anything, that there's, like you're struggling, but it doesn't have to be that, because why? We are changing the narrative, and we are doing the work in very intentional and strategic ways. Diversifying revenue, that also comes from, again, looking at your portfolio, looking at what types of prospective funders that you have in there, especially people of the global majority and people that, you would think that would be make unlikely partners, but actually really does make sense. So please do, take a risk on that. Take scaled risk when you're putting together your portfolio and thinking about who you would like to approach. And influencer marketing. So just like, we see our YouTubers out there, we're going to start seeing more of that, people, influencers from the nonprofit sector coming on and, making videos and bringing more awareness to all of the amazing missions that are out there, and it's really going to be, you know, a different I think a different era. So all of these trends, you know, cannot be implemented properly unless you have a strong community that's behind you, alongside you, helping to advance your missions authentically, intentionally, and most of all, in love. So I think, Muhi, we have this is time for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for beautifully wrapping that up. And I think there is a lot for each of us to chew on in terms of how we engage community, how we support community, and showcase the wins in our community as well. So thank you for beautifully leading us through that. There was a question that came in early on, but it may have been to a point you made earlier. Arnold King writes in, how does your nonprofit mission relate to the framework? So
the framework, yeah. So that's going to be, you know, because again, this is your nonprofit and you know it best. So you're really going to look at the framework and determine how best, you know, you can prepare yourself for this work, and looking at your current partners, looking at the current landscape that you're in, looking at how can I make the best decisions strategically, and who do I need to partner with to really take this. You know, a lot of times we worry about taking it to the top. So how can I message this correctly when, you know, maybe my manager may not totally be on board? And so it's all about building a culture of philanthropy. And that's why I say that you really have to take ownership of the power that you have, because a lot of times we don't think that, you know, when we are depending on, you know, what level that we're at, we don't think that we have that power, but we do. We just have to figure out what is the best way that we can get people on board. And I think that comes from, again, talking to people, really understanding what their blue flame is, and how can we, you know, get the language. I always say things are like, you know, it's based on semantics, right? You can say one thing one way and I can say one thing another way, and it'll make sense if I use the language that that person, you know, really responds to. So I think it's just about kind of stepping back, looking at it from a 5,000-foot view and saying, you know, how can I approach this work differently through a lens of community building, through a lens that is driven by heart. And so that's what I would encourage you to do.
excellent. Kenzie, do you have anything that you'd want to add to that?
I think that I would agree with Lisa, specifically for KIP. Investing in your relationships, I think is important on all levels. So as a major giving officer, you want to always ensure that your relationships are transformational, right? And not transactional. And I had a partner I was meeting with, and when Lisa and I collaborate, sometimes we always like to talk about the and. So how can we partner? And I think a lot of investment in relationship really looks at, when dealing with some partners, how they can help your organization. But if you're with corporate, if you're trying to partner with like corporate or family foundations, how can you also help them? So there has been times where I have, you know, attempted to a partnership with a corporation that maybe their giving opportunities or allowments don't align with our mission. But in, you know, talking to other smaller nonprofits or other foundations, I've learned that those giving parameters are in alignment with another organization that I was unable to partner with. So being a connector in the community, connecting them together to see how they can work in alignment. And then that also shows, you know, your partners and then people you're building relationships with, that this isn't transactional, but you really are wanting to ensure that your organization or you're successful, but you're willing to help them become successful in any plights that they have going as well. And I think that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add one thing too, like when you're thinking about the framework and as it relates to your organization, if you think about it, a lot of the messaging and webinars and sessions out there are really about, you know, the actual tactical part of fundraising, but very rarely do we get the heart part of it, right? Very rarely do we get the, how do I prepare myself for this work? And so that is where that approach is coming from, just to clarify.
Yeah, and I think what stands out to me is like, for everybody on this call, who is our Lisa, who is our Kenzie that we can reach out to and build those connections with and brainstorm about how to solve problems in our community. And it's working with other organizations in the similar space. So, and not being afraid to build those bridges. Because again, likely if you're in a similar community, sometimes there are donors giving to all of those organizations. And what can a donor do to build that trust and engagement in the community? But also looking at, okay, we know our organization supports this need, and around the block, there's this other issue that also needs help. And if we were able to partner, we'd be able to solve, feed two birds with one worm, right? So we have another comment from Lorena, who writes, my org is not a community-centric provider. We really focus on individualized care. And so building a sense of community of donors, we struggle to marry this to our mission. Any suggestions or models to reference that can help you?
Yeah, I just go back to, starting from what you have available to you. So the folks that are already there, talking to them on a deeper level. You'll be very surprised that some donors or some of these supporters have not been asked very specific questions. I remember I was at an organization and there was a person that it was a hospital setting, and that person would always refer potential donors to the foundation, but no one ever thanked that person or asked them what made them do that. And so I went in and I told them thank you, and that person almost cried, right? And it was because they never heard a thank you, and I was able to build bridges with that person and able to build, actually I could even build a separate portfolio just based on the those prospects that that person gave me. And so I think it's really looking at what you have and starting there. Also looking at your own personal network. So for me, my experience has been that most of the organizations that I've been at, say for Children's Hospital, did not have warm portfolios for me. So I have built every single portfolio at every organization that I've been at thereafter. And I had to think about, where do I start? And it's always start from where you have, and then you can branch out. And that's why I talk a lot about networking, because when you network, you meet more people, you're able to, get connected. And sometimes it may not be that person that you're meeting, but because you have expressed your passion for the organization so well, they're like, you know what, I think you need to meet that person. And then that is how you continue to build. And when you talk about community centric, again, a lot of people get afraid of that because it is a form of activism. When you're talking about bringing voices to the table that have been left out because of the unjust distribution of power, a lot of people get afraid of that. But right now, again, I say it's not a time to play small. And that is why I'm saying you have to do the work on yourself so you can be courageous enough to say, you know what, I'm seeing this. This is the gap. This is how we can potentially fill it. Let's try to work on, let's create a strategy so that we're doing it intentionally, that in a way that everybody can get on board, and really approach it from that way. And I hope that helps.
Definitely. Kenzie, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just say, if your organization, if I'm understanding this correctly, your organization is not a community-centric organization or provider, you focus on, individualized care, I would say try to build a community within that individualized care model. So if it is, if you're working with people like one-on-one based on their specific needs, but I'm sure there's a web of people who have those specific needs, try to build the community within the organization and within your donor pool. And then everything that Lisa has mentioned throughout this hour, you can kind of you can build from there. So if it's not an organization that's specifically community based or a mission to help the community at large, you still have that community that you're helping and your constituent base, and you can start branching out and building your community from there.
Great, Lisa, you're getting shout outs in the chat, so definitely be sure to read them. We have a question from an anonymous attendee. What strategies have you found effective to shift leadership's mindset, focusing on metrics, money raised by X deadline, more towards accepting a community building, relationship focused approach as a more effective way to engage donors and raise funds?
So just remember that when I'm saying community, community building, it's not reinventing the fundraising wheel, right? We're still doing the same thing. We're just looking through it from a lens from the heart, right? So it doesn't mean that you're not focused on metrics. It doesn't mean that you're not focused on your goals or anything like that. It's just taking a different approach. I have always been someone that I don't care if a donor has given $5 or $1 million. I'm going to treat you the same. And what I mean by that is that this is a human being that decided that, you know what, we're going to make an impact here. So remember that as you are doing the work, that it actually emanates from you and how you are going to, create the community around your mission, how you're going to interact with people, right? I'm sure all of us has someone in our lives that we're like, wow, everybody and everybody loves you, or everybody, if I ask you for something, you always have a resource, right? And that is because of the relationships that you have been able to create. And if you really think about it and you get to the core of fundraising, it is about relationships. If we talk about anything else, it is about relationships. So going back to that, realizing you're not reinventing the wheel, you're just looking at the approach from a different lens. And that is why I continue to emphasize, getting right within yourself. What are your governing principles? What do you want to accomplish through your work that is not necessarily separate from the mission, but it's what your principles are, so that you can own your power, that you can, approach it with confidence and commitment. And when we're talking about community building, I will have to say that I have, because I've never really looked at myself as a fundraiser. I've always looked at myself as a community builder. And I remember one time I said that in front of my manager, and she was like, "That's not what we do." And I told her, "Well, isn't that what we do? We're building communities of people that liberate other communities of people, for a greater impact." And so again, it's all in the language that you choose. That is the narrative that I choose to live by. Now, I could have decided, let me back down, but I didn't. And I was able to show through metrics, right? I was able to show, look, I brought in this donor that you did not think that was going to, make an impact. I brought them in. So not only was I showing up and being successful in that, right? I not only met my goal and I exceeded it, but I was able to show them that my approach really worked. And so when you're doing it from this approach, it's not about other people really necessarily validating you if they can't get on board. It's about you modeling that so that other people can see that. That's just like when you go back to building a culture of philanthropy, right? You have to model that yourself. You can't tell a donor, okay, I want you to, make this gift, and you haven't even made a gift to your organization or other organizations, right? You have to be that model. And so I hope that helps you as you are, as you are facing some of these, setbacks, is that you have to really think about your why. What do you want to accomplish in this sector, and how you can do it in a way that's going to make the most sense. But also you still have that, that fundraising energy in there, right? And you are like, you know what, I have this goal that I need to meet, and this is a strategy. This is my fundraising blueprint of the way that I'm going to do this. And so if you have that, if you abide by the framework and you have that fundraising blueprint, then it will be so much easier for you as you move towards your goal. So I hope that helps.
Absolutely. Kenzie, anything to add?
I think Lisa covered it. I was gonna say, everyone, unfortunately, we're all governed by metrics. But I think if you always have those metrics in the back of your mind, and you can show strategic implementation of how you're getting to that goal, and you can show the moves through the moves management process or what your plan has been to raise those funds, then usually, hopefully, leadership will get on board. But I will say that the transactional way of raising money is gone by the wayside. People like to get in, they like to push their sleeves up, they like to volunteer, and they like to give time and money and help and really see what the organization is doing. And a lot of times people will volunteer first before they give. So you really have to, it's a slippery slope. You can't be only focused on transactional and metrics, because you'll really lose the engagement and interest of the donor.
Right. And not everybody's going to see the vision either.
Mhm.
Remember, there's when you say visionary, not everybody is a visionary. You have to understand that. And not everybody's going to see the vision. And so that's why I continue to say you have to model this. If this is how you want to approach fundraising, that is what you have to model. And I do feel that it has more longer term success than obviously transactional fundraising.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So I hope
Right.
that's
And
helpful.
definitely is. And what that makes me think about is doing a data dive into your CRM. Who's
Mhm.
lapsed? Who has
Yes.
been disengaged? Who can you win back? And see why they stopped giving. Was there a particular action, or did they just miss the opportunity? And it fell off their radar, and maybe they changed their email and they stopped getting emails. So many different things. But what can we do to build those connections? And if these are in our metrics as KPIs for donor retention, for making sure we're reducing the amount of attrition, looking at how we can win back more donors.
Yeah.
I think these are interesting ways to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it also starts too with, changing your attitude. I mean, I think, and also for, specifically too for major gift fundraisers like myself, I know that, once you know what your major gift threshold is at, right? You're like, oh, I'm not talking to anybody below that, right? We have to change our attitudes about that. I've had so many instances where somebody that has given $50 has been lapsed because they nobody wanted to talk to them after that, right? And then when I come in and I see this and I'm chatting them up or whatever, and they give like $100,000 donation,
Mm-hmm.
really all it was is changing my attitude about it, right?
Yeah.
And that takes time, but I've heard so many instances from so many of my colleagues of people that have just had, because I'm sorry, our fundraising sector can be very elitist, right? And I know I'm saying the truth, and it's like, oh, I can't do that today. But if we took the time to think about it, and I'm not saying all major gift officers, you need to talk to, just spend your time on, folks that are giving $50. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if we all took the time to get to know our donors and talk to them and understand who they are, then it would be a very different outcome. I remember I talked to this one lapsed donor, and he just said nobody followed up with me. It was that simple.
Right.
Like, if
Yeah.
somebody had followed up with me, if somebody had continued the conversation, then, you guys would probably have seen a lot more out of me. So I always came in like being
Mm-hmm.
the fixer. Like, I felt like I was Olivia Pope for a lot of the organizations that I was at, because I'm coming in trying to fix and get these relationships. And many of them say, you know what, nobody asked me these very simple questions. So that's why I said it's not reinventing the wheel, it's reinventing your approach and change your attitude about
Love
what
that.
philanthropy is, not just fundraising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think with those opportunities of engagement and looking at the numbers, looking at the data, even with planned giving, if that's like the holy grail, the end all, where you want to get your donor relationship, they say oftentimes it's those donors who are giving $20 a month for 20 years. Those are the people that you want to be approaching and building those relationships with, that
Absolutely.
might leave you with, $500,000. So
Right.
those are the things that you don't want to forget. And I think to Lisa's point, don't lose sight of a potential donor because they don't meet the demographic that you're expecting them to be in.
Absolutely.
And you want to build relationships and inroads in communities that can lead for more opportunities within these communities to give.
Right. And
So,
also don't discount the cold calls either, because I'm going to tell you, and again, it depends on the type of person you are. And I know Kenzie is with this on me. We will cold call somebody in a minute, but I've had such amazing experiences of cold calling a foundation or what have you. And the donor, like, giving what I call the and it'll be like one gift, then another gift. Oh, and then they introduced me to their DAF, folks. So it's like, that's what I'm talking about, scaled risks, right? We have to take a little bit more risks in fundraising sometimes.
yeah. And I think in that magic moment that you might catch one person on the phone, right? Just say, I'm really just calling to thank you for being a donor. And I just want to ask 3 questions.
Yeah.
And if they say yes, that's your opening. And you want to ask them, like, what motivated their first gift to your organization, what they love about your organization, and can they connect you with other people that might support your organization. And that's the hook, right? That third one gets them in, it allows for future follow-up. And then you say, what's the best method? I know phone calls can be daunting sometimes, but can I email you? Can I text you? What's the best way to keep this relationship moving forward?
Yeah,
So I think if we can be bold and brave to do those things, many doors will open.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, I don't see any more questions. So again, thank you so much to Lisa and Kenzie for sharing with us so many fantastic tips. And we saw in the chat, everybody had loved it. So
So
we will be, no, you're good.
I
Just
just
a
wanted
reminder. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to thank everybody for showing up, and I hopefully you're able to take something away from this. Like I said, not everything is about tactics. It's really about getting yourself prepared for the work, which is something that I don't think that we have done. And once you're prepared and you come with an open heart, willing to learn, take risks, make mistakes, fail, all of that, and be courageous and brave through all that and still meet your goal and and exceed it, then I have done my job. So yes, thank you for showing up.
Of course. And just a reminder, next month we have an upcoming webinar. So if you haven't registered already, please be sure to sign into the portal and sign up for the session in July. We are always thrilled to be here with you and learning with you. Thank you so much for participating. The recording with the presentation will go out within 1 to 2 weeks, and you'll see it in the portal. Again, a really big shout out and thank you to both Lisa and Kenzie for sharing their expertise, and to each and every one of you for joining. So thank you so much for your commitment.
Thank you, Kenzie, and thank you, Muhi. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Fundraising Academy and National University.
Thank you, guys.
Happy to be here. Bye-bye.